I really think that question I just been asked is how I knew I became an artist or when I became an artist. I don't think there's any kind of special date or time. I always felt I'm an artist. I always felt that my purpose is to make work. I remember since really childhood that I started drawing on my, the in my room, on the walls, on the horror of my mother, and then everywhere I could see the piece of paper. And my first exhibition I was 14, and I remember that even now I don't know how to sew buttons on the shirt, but I really know how to do art. So definitely start very early. I always knew. One of my first trip outside of Yugoslavia, and it was in 1971, and this was the time that with a group of artists from Student Cultural Center from Belgrade, we made this kind of legendary trip to Edinburgh, invited for the Richard DeMarco to be the part of Edinburgh Festival. And also Joseph Beuys understood at the time was his first trip outside of Germany, and this is the time where I actually met him. And it was really interesting to see that very mysterious figure coming into the space where we was sitting at the table with the long coat and his legendary hat and also this vest that he had always everything in that he needed. And it was really different than anybody else I ever met. There was certain charisma around him, and at the same time also extreme amount of gentleness. And you don't know if you wanted to be afraid of him, or you like him immediately, or you be too shy even to talk. But this all later came to somehow to be much more clear when we really personally met him. But the first impression was mysterious figure in the long coat and hat. The Rhythm Time was the performance I made in Edinburgh, and it was the first time he actually witnessed this performance. But he didn't really have a comment, and we didn't much talk at the time. He was much more interested in showing his actually long lecture of 6 hours about art democracy. But Dunja Blažević was the person who invited him later on to be part of our April meeting, and then was what we had much more conversation, bigger contact, and that he really met all us and what he was doing very experimental at that time in really environment which was absolutely strictly communist. So when he came to 1974 to Belgrade, what the great thing about that was that actually he looked so different. And what was the difference? That he didn't wear this hat. He actually, through the entire time he was there, he didn't wear the hat. And I never understood why. Much later it was explained to me it was because of the kind of being humble to be in Belgrade, where he actually, during the war, was flying over Stukas and probably bombing us. I'm not sure, but that was the time that he didn't want to have that kind of memory. He wanted to be just a normal citizen. And that time he asked for the material, which he provided him, which was six black boards, lots of charcoal, and uh, and then he made this, another, the big performance about democracy and art, where he drew all his ideas in different stages and lots of drawings and also lots of words was in German, difficult for us to understand. Even English was not so common. But that was the sole thing that was fascinating me because actually, in the front of my eyes, he developed entire installation and work of art was just made right there. With him came lots of collectors who was very interested to buy immediately his product wherever he was. At the time, he became very famous artist already. And and I remember after that we all went for dinner. And at that dinner, he stood up and said that all the six boards would be actually given as a present to the Student Cultural Center. So which pissed all of the collectors who came for nothing there. And it was actually very angry. And somehow dinner went into this whole big discussion and everybody left. And we was incredibly happy with this present because it was such a valuable present. We basically could rebuild the entire student center if we ever sell it. And next morning we come, all of us, to see these blackboards. And on our horror, the cleaning lady in the morning, she cleaned almost all of them just with the sponge and water. But because, it's communism, because there's lots of corruption, a cleaning lady never really cleaned properly. So actually almost 70% was left over, just parts was washed. And we was like terrified because nobody had this idea that we should fix this immediately. So we fixed the blackboards, we put them into storage, and it became like our big treasure. But then during the Second World War, no second, sorry, before the Balkan War, the the boards, the center part of the cellar was burned. So basically, all of this was lost forever. And that's the kind of sad story, but also amusing story about his visit in Berlin. In the same time, during the Student Culture Center was huge festival, so many different artists was doing the different work. And one of my performance that was made in the courtyard of the Student Culture Center was written five. And I really remember creating this huge star made out of the wood, and 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 inside it was empty, the star, that you can actually go inside, but all the wood and the shaving of the wood peels was soaked in 100-liter petrol. So I was just about to burn the star, and I remember he was there with his wife and son. And before I start, he came to me and said, "Marina, be careful. Fire is dangerous." And of course, I didn't listen. I was so full of myself and so full of the, young artist want to show his best. So I actually burned the star. It was an enormous flame. And I made a ritual of cutting all my hair, putting the points of the star, cutting my nails on my hand, my two nails on my feet, on my feet, and burning all this, and then entering the star, and then lying inside the star. And my idea was really to lie there till the whole fire is gone, just to see kind of when I leave, kind of black silhouette of my body where I was. And it was communist star, something that you find in every book in our country, in every flag, in every high school. Something very secret, and me burning it in that way was absolutely unthinkable. And I remember that one thing I didn't think about when lying the star, that I was completely, actually oxygen was taken away and I lost consciousness. And I didn't even think of this before. If I listened to Joseph Beuys, it would be different, but I didn't. And there, so the doctor was in audience. The, it was really fortunate that he see the little flickering of the fire was coming to my feet, naked feet, and I didn't move. So he understood that I was out of conscious. So they came in and took me out. And I was so angry. I remember incredible anger because for me, that actually just by my limit of my own body, I I could not finish the performance. And it was so funny that people say, "But you've been safe. Your life was safe." I didn't care at the time. For me, art was everything. And then next morning, I went home very sickly to sleep. Nobody see me. And next morning, I remember coming for breakfast and my grandmother making coffee, and she turned with a tray, to give me the breakfast. And she looked at me, and she think that she saw the devil. She dropped everything on the table and ran away. I was looking like hell. I had the burnt face, I have the burnt hair. It was, all cut off. It was incredible. You know, my family didn't really have easy time with me, being body art the artist in those days. My mother was immediately, and father questioned communist meetings, what kind of education. My professors of art was thinking that was absolutely unacceptable, and society was not something that would be accepted ever as any form of art, even not as art itself. No, because we were so isolated. Student Culture Center was some kind of perception of art. it was a kind of like a kind of really like a small molecule in the city where normal official art was going on, and anybody who will come, from the foreigner country to choose artists for any exhibition anywhere, they will be guided by government, controlled by government, and bring to the regular artists who present this kind of art. Student Culture Center was always been avoided, so it was like a kind of idol of the freedom that we had, and we had very small audience. The audience was basically the girlfriends of the artists. That with me, I was the only woman there. They're doing the work, and there was just some young historian art critics who was there. So we had a small audience, which actually kind of fit itself with the criticism and doing this. We are so angry to and so eager to actually break with the tradition and do something different. But at the same time, nobody was coming from outside. That was the really thing. So our kind of impact to society was basically zero. Yeah, the same thing, because the entire Student Culture Center festivals was seen and never really reviewed much in the newspaper, and it was review was always negative, never positive. I remember Bob Wilson was there. Bob Wilson, I remember he was doing the theater piece, and the doorman from the festival, he was doing something very long durational, and it was already close to midnight, and the doorman come 2 3 times, to us to say they're going to close the building, we all have to go out, and we didn't listen. And then last time 50 to 12 he came with the gun and fire in the ceiling and said, go now, and then we have to go. And that's how was the interrupted the Bob Wilson piece. So it was really something that we was rebellion, and in the place that we win by student revolution in 1968, with Tito give this student culture center to us, because before it was actually the meeting place for the secret police, just to sit around play chess during the weekends, and the wives was doing meeting or gossip, and that was the where it was there. And when we made demonstration, one of the demands was to give us our own cultural center, which he finally did. At the same time, he gave us this, but he isolated us from the real rest of the society. So we had freedom inside the center and nowhere else. Then there was few other festivals that I didn't met Ula yet, that he actually put my name around, and I was participating in international festivals. Contemporanea was one in Rome, very important exhibition. So this was really important, that actually he was very generous to young artists and tried to help them, and I was very, very grateful to that. And then there was Arnhem Festival, where actually he was one of the people invited. And I remember that, we met him many times and talked to him. And I remember that before we start our performance, he came to clean the house, the actual space. And I remember Ulay being incredibly angry. He said, he's now cleaning our space. You look like, he's marking his territory. And I found very amusing. Choose the talking to that hair because it's one of my favorite. But it's so interesting that actually we only know the image of him holding the hair, with the gold mask, and they're really, on the very anger. Is his wife very angry when they call this piece Pieta because she doesn't think so. But never mind. But this was the image actually saved. But then when I really went to her to ask for permission to do this work, she was so kind to show me all this other television material. But the reason the television material never saw Day of Light, because they was really make fun of him. They was ridiculing his action. They was thinking this kind of bullshit. That's not art at all. Same and done with me millions of times. So that actually was completely misleading. Looking his action and listening what actually comment on television was about the same action. So I really, when I looked at, I completely, cut off all comments, because to me they're something that I went through my entire life doing my own work, and I concentrated on actually his own action and what he was doing to kind of reconstruct, like a kind of archaeologist, what was done there and what I can contribute to this new piece. The performance in New York, first, it was really, but also that performance in complex of seven easy pieces, one day with all other works from the performance art. It was really, really, I mean, we have incredible record of audience. But first of all, it took me 12 years to get permission to show performance in Guggenheim in the atrium. Never been done before. And I didn't want it to show anywhere else. I wanted to show in Guggenheim, who really entire, the architecture was made to receive spiritual art. And the idea that you can see from different spiral in different positions, very important. And it took me 12 years. Finally, I got permission. And which really was important to me, that Dot brings so much audience to the Guggenheim and so much press. And they got this award as the best performance of the year, so on, so on. That was really opening of Guggenheim to performance. After me, there was, I mean, it's always now something happening in the same space in Atrium, but never before. So this was a huge opening. And I think that his performance, Maria Export, the Bruce Nauman, Vito Conci, Gina Pane, all Doprine, the contribute to this new view how performance can be seen and kind of um, actually redo with the new things. And my important thing for me was that I have to show original piece exactly how it was, that the public know the date, who did it, and whatever, and then bring my own version. My own version was actually put everything into time. Every performance never doesn't matter how long was in reality. I made 7 hours, and it was much shorter in reality, all of them. So let's say Gina Pane piece was only, um, they never did me, they didn't give me permission to do all piece. They give me only to do, one segment lying on the candles, but that segment was only 14 minutes, and I extend to 7 hours. Performance of Beuys was around 30 minutes, and I extend to 7 hours. So all of this work, I give them kind of time. That was my contribution to this work. For me, art doesn't have gender, never did. So I don't care at all. Absolutely don't. I mean, excuse me, sit back on Conchi. He's masturbating under the stage. I think what we women produce, he produced semen. I produce humidity, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's important is the concept and content of the work. No, no. It's always so mysterious that he was, the kind of saved by shamans and all of that thing with the, where the fat comes and the materials he's using and filth and I like to keep mysterious. I always believe this Marcel Duchamp, what he said, the public have to to finish the work. It's not necessary that we explain everything. We need to have space that you have your own explanation. And to me, art is like a Rashomon, Kurosawa movie, when you have one killer in the forest and seven people saw some little pieces of something. They all sit around the fire and they talk what they see. And there's seven different versions. The art is always like this. Whatever you see from Joseph Beuys, each of us will have another version. And let this live that way. But I'm telling you, it's very different. The exhibitions when he actually, when he, how you say, when he organized his work in a space without him, because the spirit is different. I also was there most of the time for documenta. He documenta with the honey pump. He literally, I went there every day. And that was when he was incredibly important piece. After he finished this work, nobody can put this honey pump together. There's no concept how actually it would function. And till now, it was never actually reconstructed. It's only there as a parts, as idea, but actually you could never see this really functioning with him. It was unique. And also being present with the public entire time of the commenter, which is 3 months. Is 90 days. That's very special. To me, this was so important. How for him was important interaction with the people. Anybody. he can talk. The person from the street cleaning the house or the president of the country, he will have time to explain. I don't see him as a pioneer. I don't see anybody as a pioneer because, if you take performance in a very far, the futurists made performances, Fuchs and Happening, the surrealists made performances, the Dadaist made performances, I mean, all of them done performative work. And this is, I think, each of us was pioneer in his own way, bringing something different and new. But my dream is to create the live performance, from the past. All of these pieces from different, forgotten pieces from different periods of art, and see what will happen. I mean, it will look really early, the roots of performance. It's so fascinating. So I will make the show with maybe 50 live artists performing all of these pieces, 10 or 15 pieces per day, and they're always changing. So everything you see is live. There's no any document can be just in one small room. So I'm thinking to do this in 2028. My dream to do. Need 5 institutions to accomplish because it's not it's very expensive to actually create something completely live for 3 months, 8 hours a day. No, I don't need to perform anymore. I will organize. I really have the memory of so many pieces, and my generation stopped working and they don't have any of this memory. I will start definitely with James Lee Byers' piece, from the early 70s in Bern Museum. He put in the front of the museum this huge ball of the perfect carved marble. You stand in that ball, all in gold with the blindfolded on his eyes. And all what he's doing, balancing the ball, facing the entrance of the museum, is breathing. He's breathing inspiration to the museum. That's how we start. I mean, there's so many incredible voices. People don't have no memory. Young generation never saw any of this. And I really, for me, it's fascinating. I always feel like my duty to kind of reconstruct what it was and preserve spirit of performance art because it's unique. It's so special. It's a living form of art and can't be replaced with anything else. Absolutely. And they're already working on research. So we have to research into this material and stage it in a new way. And this is how people really have, I think, fascination to see something that never saw. That you see all this work dusty in the books. When I made my retrospective well, not just MoMA, but also Royal Academy, I have to have living elements. There are people who reperform in my work that I teach them, an institute teach them and train them. And this is absolutely necessary because it's otherwise you just said that that image is on the wall. This is not what performance is. Photographic work can't present the work. Video is a little better because it include movement and include the sound, but the rest is not. So, the more live material, the better. That's what my dream. And also, another thing is to me, contribution to the generally to this art performing is long durational. It's so important to do something which is long durational because long durational, you can't pretend, you can't act. If something is 1 month and 8 hours a day, it's life itself. And there's so big difference than the performance is 1 hour, 2 hours. And in early 70s, mostly of performances was always 1 hour. For simple reason, the video was 1 hour. And then they wanted to keep it on video. And then if performance never was 1 hour in 10 minutes, because they have to change the tape and then lose the time. But I think now with new technology, it can be always there.